Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. The sun filtered gently through the cracked louver windows of Umuokiri Community School, casting warm streaks across the dusty chalkboard. Amara stood at the front of the classroom, her chalk-smudged fingers dancing across equations with the ease of someone who truly loved what she did. "All right, class," she smiled, brushing her dark braids behind her ear. "If we share 12 mangoes among 4 children equally, how many does each get?" A skinny hand shot up. 3, shouted Chinedu, his front teeth missing but his grin brighter than the morning sun. Amara clapped. "Excellent, Chinedu. You're sharper than a cutlass today." The class erupted in giggles. For a moment the room was filled not with poverty or hardship, but with laughter and learning. This was her kingdom. Her joy was interrupted by the unusual growl of a luxury engine outside the school's rusted gate. Heads turned. Students craned their necks. From the window, Amara saw it, a long black SUV crawling across the field like a snake that didn't belong. It glimmered unnaturally under the rural sun. "Stay seated," she instructed firmly, though her heart pounded. The school barely saw motorcycles, let alone this kind of vehicle. Moments later, a tall man in an official-looking white agbada stepped into the doorway. His sunglasses hid his expression, but he held a scroll of parchment like he'd stepped out of a Nollywood drama. "Miss Amara's?" he said, voice deep and clear. She blinked. "Yes." He stepped in, holding the scroll up ceremoniously. "You are hereby summoned by the Royal Council of His Royal Highness, Prince Kelechi Chukwuma. You are one of 3 women selected to be considered for royal marriage. Your presence is expected at the palace this Friday." The students gasped. Even Chinedu's mouth hung open. "Wait, what?" Amara asked, stepping forward, unsure if she was the victim of a cruel prank. "You heard correctly, madam," he said with a nod. "You may keep the scroll." He handed it to her, bowed slightly, and turned. Just like that he was gone. The classroom exploded. "Teacher Amara is going to marry the prince," one girl squealed. "No more mango math for us," Chinedu hollered. But Amara stood frozen, scroll clutched in her fingers. Her breath came in short waves. The walls felt closer. Her heart thundered with something between confusion and dread. That evening her tiny home became a celebration site. Her mother, Mama Ifeoma, bustled between a pot of boiling jollof and a tray of fried fish. "I got, my daughter. Royalty. You will wear lace and gold. I knew you were born for greater things." Her younger sister Ada jumped on the mattress. "Do you think they'll give us a room in the palace too? Or servants?" "I want a servant." Amara sat quietly on a plastic chair in the corner, the scroll still on her lap. Her fingers kept tracing the royal seal. She hadn't even known the prince was searching for a bride, let alone that her name would appear on some mysterious list. "Ma," she finally spoke, "how do they know me?" Mama Ifeoma scoffed. You're famous now. Everyone knows my Amara. Even the stars are aligning." "But what if I don't want it?" she murmured. The room fell silent. Her mother turned, one hand on her hip. "Don't joke like that, Baiko. Do you know what this means for us? No more struggling to buy chalk. No more rice measured in cups. You'll lift this family." "I know, Ma. But I don't even know him." "You'll know him. Princes are trained for marriage. They don't beat women. They don't beg. They provide." Amara swallowed hard. She thought about her students, her tiny home, the open sky over the village hills. Everything that was hers felt so small, but it was hers. She excused herself and stepped outside. Night had fallen, and the sky glimmered with stars like scattered coins. A cool breeze drifted over the field, whispering through plantain trees. Amara wrapped her arms around herself, as if holding in the war waging in her chest. Could she really give up her quiet, simple life for gold and palaces? From across the street, Baba Yude's radio played an old highlife tune, the lyrics oddly fitting. "What is gold if your heart is not free? What is fame if your soul is chained?" She shivered. Somewhere deep inside, a strange sense of loss bloomed, over something she hadn't even accepted yet. The next day at school the students behaved like they were in a movie. "Your Highness," one boy said with a dramatic bow. Amara laughed despite herself. "Back to your seats, all of you." But even laughter couldn't mask her uncertainty. When lunch break came she sat in the staff room reading the parchment again. It was beautifully written, poetic even. "The royal family seeks not just beauty but wisdom, dignity, and poise. You have been observed quietly over time. You reflect these values. Please honor us with your presence. That part chilled her. Observed. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. It was the headmaster. Amara, he said in his gentle, graying voice. The king's aide just called. They want to send a dressmaker to fit you. A dressmaker? He nodded. It's happening, my dear. You're in the running. Whatever doubts you have, talk to God. And don't be afraid. Destiny doesn't always wear the face we expect. As he left, Amara looked at the scroll once more. Then she folded it, stood, and whispered to herself. Then maybe destiny will have to meet me where I stand. By Friday morning, the sun rose slowly over the sleepy village of Umuokiri, unaware that its most unlikely daughter was about to step into history. Amara's mother had barely slept. She'd braided her daughter's hair into tight coils, laid out the finest wrapper she owned, and borrowed a pair of kitten heels from the pastor's wife. Amara sat still, dressed in a modest yellow blouse and the borrowed shoes that pinched her toes. Her nerves drowned out her mother's fussing. A long black car returned, this time with tinted windows and a driver in uniform. Two women stepped out, one in head-to-toe ankara with a tape measure around her neck, and the other clutching a clipboard. You are Miss Amara Ease? The clipboard woman asked, her voice clipped. Yes. We will escort you to the capital for your weekend at the royal palace. Bring one bag. Just one? Everything else will be provided. Amara glanced back at her mother. Mama Ifioma nodded eagerly, tears gathering in her eyes. As the car rumbled onto the expressway, Amara stared at the receding village behind her. The red earth roads, the zinc rooftops, the half-done church, they were hers. But for now she was leaving them behind. The palace wasn't just grand, it was otherworldly. Giant marble statues, fountains shaped like leaping lions, gardens that smelled of oranges and cinnamon. Amara walked past gold-trimmed drapes and into a reception hall where two other women were waiting, gorgeous, polished, confident. Contestant 3 has arrived, the clipboard woman announced. Contestant? One woman, dressed in flowing white silk, gave a practiced smile. You must be the rural one, she said sweetly. So nice of the palace to diversify. I'm Amara, she replied, steady. And you are? Dolly. And this is KG. KG waved without looking up from her compact mirror. It won't matter. The prince already has favorites. Amara stiffened. Something about the room felt more like a game show than a sacred rite. But she said nothing. Later that evening they were summoned to dine with Prince Kalechi himself. He entered the hall with a presence that demanded attention, tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed. Ladies, he said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Welcome to the palace. Amara watched him carefully. His words were smooth, his movements practiced. But when he reached her, his gaze lingered. Not in admiration, but calculation. I've heard of you, he said. The village teacher. I do enjoy charity work. She nodded politely but said nothing. Already she could feel the cage tightening. The next day was a blur of fittings, photos, and protocols. A royal aide walked Amara through a list of proper conduct for public royal appearances. She was instructed on how to wave, how to sit, and even how to smile. At lunch, Ndali and KG chattered over wine glasses about designer brands and childhood trips to Europe. Amara sipped water quietly, watching the staff rush about like wind-up dolls. Every corner of the palace glittered, but it was sterile. Cold. That night, as Amara stood by the massive window in her suite, she whispered, "This isn't what I imagined." A knock startled her. It was Prince Kalechi. "I wanted to speak with you privately," he said, entering without invitation. She forced a polite smile. "Of course, Your Highness." He sat on the couch and gestured for her to do the same. "You're different," he said. "That could be good, or bad." She blinked. "I don't understand." "You're quiet. Thoughtful. But this isn't about love, Miss Ease. It's about legacy. If I choose you, your life changes permanently. Understand?" "I see. Good." He rose. "I'll be announcing the engagement soon. Just be ready." When he left, Amara sank into the sofa, heart thudding. She wasn't even sure she'd said yes. The palace was a mansion of mirrors, but none showed her reflection. On Sunday morning, the royal calendar included a spiritual meditation walk around the garden. Amara took it as her chance. Dressed in a simple blue dress, she slipped past the flower hedges and into a side gate she'd spotted earlier. It opened onto a narrow path leading to the city. She walked quickly, heart racing. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to feel the ground without velvet beneath it. Soon she hit the main road. Cars zipped by, honking, hustling. The city had a different rhythm, chaotic, free. She raised her hand. A beat-up yellow and black taxi pulled over. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Anywhere not made of marble," she said with a chuckle. The driver raised a brow. "Rough morning? You have no idea." He nodded, his voice soft. "I'm Hugo. Amara." She sat in the back, but as the car rolled through the bustling city, she found herself leaning forward, asking him questions. About the streets, the people, the food. "Why do you drive?" she asked. "I was studying engineering. Mama got sick. Dropped out to care for her. This feeds us." Simple. She paused. "That's admirable." He smiled into the rearview mirror. "And you? You don't look like you belong in lace." Amara laughed. "That obvious?" He turned down a quiet street. "You looked like someone running." "I was." They rode in silence for a few minutes. "Do you want me to take you back?" he asked. "Yes, but not yet." As the cab slowed to a stop near a modest roadside stall, Amara stepped out. She pulled out a crisp note from her purse and handed it to Hugo. He shook his head. "That's too much. You help me breathe again. Please." He hesitated, then accepted it, but handed her his umbrella. "The clouds are heavy. Just in case." She blinked, touched. "Thank you, Hugo." He nodded. "Call me if you ever need to escape again." She smiled and turned to walk away. The first raindrop landed on her shoulder as she disappeared into the crowd. Back at the palace, chaos. The royal aide was pacing the hallway. "Where have you been?" "I needed air." "You can't vanish like that. You're in line to become royalty." Amara shrugged. "Then royalty needs air too." The next morning, the tabloids were filled with photos of Amara from the banquet, headlines like, "The Prince's Village Rose," and "Mystery Queen in the Making." Her phone buzzed with messages from relatives, neighbors, even her old university classmates. But all she could think about was Hugo, and how for 30 minutes she felt more herself in his rickety taxi than in the entire palace. At breakfast, Prince Kelechi sat with folded arms. "You were seen downtown yesterday," he said. "Yes. With a taxi driver. Is that a crime?" He smirked. "No. But soon your face will represent the crown. Think carefully about how you carry it." Later that day, Amara took a walk in the garden again. She held the umbrella tightly, not just as a shield from the rain but as a reminder. She was still Amara. Still free. For now. 3 days later, the palace was abuzz. Cameras rolled. Journalists whispered. The royal hall was adorned with red and gold drapery, a chandelier glittering like it held captured stars. Amara stood in a floor-length gown of soft emerald, styled and sculpted into perfection. Her fingers curled nervously at her sides. Then the trumpet sounded. Prince Kelechi entered, flanked by guards and followed by murmurs. His face was unreadable as he approached the podium. His eyes briefly locked with Amara's. She blinked once and then looked away. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began smoothly, "it is with honor that I present a woman chosen not just by tradition, but by merit and grace. Miss Amara Ease." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. He turned to her, pulled a velvet box from his pocket and slowly knelt. "Amara, will you become my bride?" 1,000 breaths held at once. She froze. Her mother, watching from the front row, mouthed, "Say yes." Amara smiled faintly. "Your Highness, I need time to consider." The room fell into stunned silence. Whispers. Gasp. A photographer nearly dropped his lens. Kelechi's jaw tightened, but he kept his smile plastered. "Very well. A wise woman weighs her choices." Later in her room, Amara sat trembling. Her phone buzzed endlessly, messages from family, friends, even her old principal. The door creaked. Her mother entered, fuming. "Are you mad? Do you know what you've done?" "I couldn't lie, Mama." Mama Ifioma shook her head. "This is bigger than feelings. You've been chosen by a prince." Amara whispered, "But what if my heart chooses someone else?" That night, Amara slipped out and called Hugo. He picked up on the second ring. "Are you safe? I need a ride." Hugo met her by the park gate. He leaned against his cab, casual in a plain tee, his eyes gentle. "No palace car tonight?" he teased. She chuckled. "I needed real air." They drove in silence at first until she asked, "Do you believe in choosing love over duty?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Depends who's asking." She glanced at him. "Me." He smiled softly. "Then yes. Every time." They stopped at a roadside food stand. He ordered suya, she got puff puff and zobo. They sat on a bench, their laughter blending with the city's night hum. Amara asked, "Do you ever regret giving up school?" "I did at first. But my mother needed me. She gave me everything. Driving isn't shameful, it's service." She admired that deeply. He continued, "Besides, I've learned more from my passengers than I ever did in class." They wandered into a quiet library nearby, one Hugo said he used when he needed peace. Inside they browsed silently. Amara's fingers trailed over book spines, finally landing on one, The Cost of a Crown. Hugo noticed. "Fitting." She looked at him, heart thudding. "You're the only person I feel normal with." He met her gaze. "You're more than normal to me." They sat outside under a yellow streetlight. The breeze carried the scent of hibiscus. "I'm afraid," she confessed, "of choosing wrong." "I'd never ask you to choose me," Hugo said gently. "Just choose your peace." She blinked away tears. When he dropped her off, she lingered. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what it means to be seen." The next morning, chaos returned like a storm. Photos surfaced, grainy but clear, of Amara and Hugo laughing at the roadside, eating suya, sharing a book. The palace press secretary marched into her chamber. "What were you thinking?" Amara stood firm. "I was with a friend." "You were seen fraternizing with a commoner while the prince awaits your answer." "He's not just a commoner," she said. "He's kind." The woman hissed. "You've embarrassed the entire royal house. This could cost you everything." The backlash was immediate. Hugo's taxi was vandalized. Someone smashed the headlights and keyed insults into the paint. "I'll fix it," Hugo said calmly when she called. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "No," he said. "This is the cost of standing near someone powerful." "I knew what I was doing." Her mother wasn't as calm. "I warned you." Mama Ifioma yelled. "You've shamed us. The village is talking. Your cousins won't even go to the market." "Mama, do you love him?" Amara blinked. "I don't know yet. But I respect him. And I trust him." "Then God help you. Because love doesn't feed families." Amara spent the night awake, staring at the umbrella Hugo gave her. It was still by her bedside. She realized it had never rained that day. The royal banquet glittered under chandeliers and silk banners. Guests included dignitaries, politicians, and celebrities. Amara wore a silver gown that shimmered as she moved. Cameras followed her like hawks. Prince Kalechi stood tall at the podium. "Tonight I wish to celebrate a journey. One of honor and soon, unity." He turned to Amara and extended his hand. "Will you address the room?" She stood, breath shallow. Amara walked to the microphone. She looked out at the glittering faces, the endless cameras, the expectations crushing her like iron. "I want to thank you all," she began, voice clear, "for your kindness. For believing in the fairy tale." The room fell quiet. "But I didn't grow up dreaming of palaces. I dreamed of helping children spell their names. I dreamed of building something real, not golden." Whispers spread. "The truth is, I cannot marry Prince Kalechi." Gasp. A wine glass shattered. "I mean no disrespect," she continued, steady now. "But love should be honest. And mine is not here." Kalechi's expression twisted, half fury, half disbelief. Amara bowed slightly. "I'm grateful. But I choose freedom." She stepped down, head held high, as reporters shouted and cameras popped like fireworks. Backstage, she ran into Ndali. "You're insane," Ndali said, eyes wide. "Maybe," Amara whispered. "But I'm finally myself." By sunrise, Amara's face was on every screen across the nation. Teacher rejects prince on live TV. Ungrateful village girl spits on royalty. Mental health concerns raised after royal rejection. She woke up to over 600 missed calls. The school board sent a curt message: "We can no longer retain you. Too much media heat. Good luck." Her neighbors turned their backs. Market women shook their heads. Children were pulled from her private tutoring sessions. Even Ada, her younger sister, snapped, "You ruined everything for what? A broke taxi driver?" Only one person stayed quiet and constant. Hugo. He arrived in his half-fixed cab, parked it quietly near her gate and waited. She stepped outside, exhausted, eyes rimmed red. "I lost everything," she murmured. "No," Hugo replied. "You lost what wasn't real. What you have left, yourself, your voice, that's priceless." She collapsed into his arms. "What do I do now?" she whispered. He pulled back and said simply, "Start again. And this time build it on your terms." And together they began. Amara stood in front of a cracked wooden door in Lagos mainland, the type of neighborhood where electricity was a rumor and dreams were measured in bread loaves. She had moved out of her mother's house after the rejection fallout. I found this place through a friend, Hugo had said, rubbing his hands together nervously as she'd climbed out of his taxi. It's safe. Quiet. At least, quietish. She'd nodded. It's perfect. Inside, the room was no bigger than her old classroom. A mattress on the floor, one rickety table, and a single window with no curtain. She put her bag down like it was a crown she had finally taken off. In the days that followed, Amara applied for part-time tutoring jobs at local learning centers. Some recognized her. Most turned her down. "You're that girl?" a headmistress said coldly. "We don't want drama." But Hugo was relentless. He asked around. Made calls. Shared his old clients' contacts. Eventually, a church-run literacy program accepted her. Twice a week. No pay yet. Just food. "I'll make the rest work," she told him. They began spending evenings mapping out ideas on old papers. How to teach kids in underfunded areas, how to get street children reading again. She didn't care if people laughed. Each morning she'd walk to a small shack school behind a market stall. 10 children sat on broken benches waiting for her. "Good morning, Miss Amara." She smiled. "Let's change the world one word at a time." Weeks passed. Life was no easier, but her soul felt lighter. One Sunday afternoon, Amara and Hugo sat at a city park bench, watching children chase a plastic bottle down a hill. "I used to dream of this," she said. "Parks? No. Peace." Hugo looked at her. "You make everything better when you're around." She turned, caught off guard. "I mean it," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You turned a taxi into a sanctuary, a shack into a school, a name the world mocked, into a name I respect." She stared at him. "I don't have anything left to offer. You have everything. Kindness, courage, vision. And you have my heart." She swallowed hard. Her chest ached. Hugo reached into his pocket and pulled out something. A ring, twisted paper and foil. "This is all I can give right now. I can't offer you a castle. But I can offer you the truth." Her breath caught. "Will you marry me, Amara? Not because I'm perfect, but because I'll never ask you to be anything other than yourself." She smiled with trembling lips. "Yes." He slipped the paper ring onto her finger. They both laughed through tears. They told no one. The world had taken enough from them. This moment was theirs. Their wedding took place at an old community hall on the city outskirts. No press. No fanfare. No gowns worth headlines. Amara wore a borrowed lace dress. Hugo wore a second-hand suit 2 sizes too big. But the hall was full. Children from her lessons sang with handmade instruments. Old neighbors came bearing plates of rice and wrappers of moi. Hugo's mother, frail but smiling, blessed them with shaky hands. The pastor asked, "Do you take this man, driver, son, friend, as your partner?" "I do," Amara said without a pause. "And do you take this woman, teacher, rebel, dreamer, as your wife?" "I do," Hugo whispered. They kissed under a string of paper flowers. Someone recorded it quietly. Someone shared it online. By midnight, the video had over 10,000 shares. "She married the man she loved, without cameras or crowns," one caption read. And just like that, the tide began to shift. The backlash transformed into curiosity. Then curiosity turned to admiration. Social media buzzed. "We judged too quickly. The woman who chose love over diamonds. Queen without a crown." A young documentary filmmaker reached out. "I saw the video," she said, voice shaking with excitement. "I'd love to follow you for a few weeks. Just your work, your story. I think people need to see it." Amara agreed cautiously. She wasn't interested in fame, but she knew the power of stories. Meanwhile, the palace released a statement. "The former candidate has chosen a different path, one that does not reflect the values and tradition we uphold. We wish her well in her private journey." The word stung, but not like before. Her mother called at last. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You chose love. And he's a good man. I see that now." Amara cried quietly after the call. The filmmaker, Chioma, followed them with a tiny camera. No makeup, no scripts. Just their lives. The dusty streets, the makeshift chalkboards, the way Hugo waited for her with food after class. One day, Chioma filmed Amara teaching under a tree. A child whispered, "I want to be like you when I grow up." That night, Amara wrote in her journal, "Let the world laugh. I'll keep building." The first community school opened in an abandoned warehouse. They patched holes in the roof, painted walls with leftover cans, and borrowed desks from a closed factory nearby. Word spread. By the end of the month, over 70 parents lined up to enroll their children. Hugo's cab became a school bus transporting kids from slums. Local vendors donated supplies. "I never thought my child would hold a book," a mother said, eyes glistening. "I never thought I'd be happy again," Amara replied. Hugo built chalkboards with his own hands. He used scrap metal for desk frames and rigged solar panels to power fans. When the kids asked who owned the school, Amara smiled and said, "You do. Every one of you." Chioma filmed everything. Her short documentary, The Woman Who Walked Away from Gold, dropped quietly on YouTube. In 48 hours it went viral. Celebrities reposted. NGOs called. An international school reached out offering resources and support. Amara stared at her old paper engagement ring that night. "You think this was the right choice?" she asked Hugo as they swept the classroom floor together. He leaned on his broom and kissed her forehead. Every single day. Outside, laughter echoed, children chasing chalk dust into the wind. While Amara's school bloomed with color and purpose, the palace walls began to show cracks. The once revered Prince Kelechi found himself at the center of scandal when an investigative journalist exposed a string of misappropriated funds tied to his so-called charity outreach programs. The very same media that once mocked Amara turned their focus. Where did the royal funds go? Exclusive, fake invoices, real consequences. Prince's outreach funded luxury cars, not orphans. The people were furious. In a country where hunger and poor education plagued communities, seeing millions lavished on image polishing made blood boil. Hashtags calling for an audit of the royal accounts trended daily. Protesters gathered in front of the palace gates. Kelechi's once unshakable image of royalty began to crumble. Meanwhile, Amara sat in her classroom, reading a poem aloud to her students. "Not all gold shines. Some gold blinds. But truth, even in dust, glows." The class clapped. One of the older students whispered, "Madam, they said the prince is in trouble now." She paused, then smiled softly. Sometimes trouble is how truth finds its voice. That night, Hugo showed her a news clip of Kelechi's lawyer dodging questions. Amara sipped her zobo in silence. "He'll be fine. They always land on silk." Hugo tilted his head. "Maybe. Or maybe this time the ground won't be as soft." 2 weeks later, Amara received an unusual message on her phone. Sender, Balaji Olamide, national news anchor. "Dear Miss Amara, I owe you an apology. When you rejected the prince, I led a panel mocking your decision on national TV. I was wrong. May I visit your school and tell your story? Publicly." Hugo looked over her shoulder, surprised. "You gonna let her come?" Amara sighed. "She was part of the fire they used to burn me. Let her now be part of the water that helps this garden grow." When Balaji arrived with a small camera crew, she looked nervous. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, standing at the entrance of the humble school. "But I want people to see what I refuse to understand." Amara welcomed her with warmth but no bitterness. "Just let the children be seen. That's enough." The interview was emotional. Balaji asked, "When you lost your job, your name, your respect, how did you keep going?" Amara looked directly into the lens. "Because Hugo never let me forget who I was. Because my students believed I was more than headlines. And because the truth, no matter how hated at first, will always stand in the end." The segment aired nationwide. Children were shown learning in barefoot joy, parents testifying how their kids had learned to read for the first time. Donations poured in. A local construction company offered to help build a permanent structure. A UK charity pledged books and teacher training. And women, young, old, poor, educated, began tagging Amara in messages. "You gave us courage. Thank you for showing us we can walk away too. You didn't choose gold. You chose fire, and became light." Chioma's full documentary, The Woman Who Walked Away from Gold, premiered at a local theater sponsored by a women's foundation. Amara didn't want to go. "It's too much," she whispered to Hugo. "I'm not a star." He squeezed her hand. "No, you're something better. You're a story worth remembering." When they arrived, the crowd gave a standing ovation. Amara wore a simple Ankara dress. Hugo wore the same second-hand suit he wore at their wedding, with the sleeves finally tailored to fit. The film played in silence. Raw footage. Her walking in the rain with Hugo's umbrella. Teaching barefoot children under trees. Replaying her televised rejection of Prince Kelechi. Her voice in one quiet scene saying, "I didn't want to be a queen in a cage. I wanted to be a woman who lived." The film ended. The crowd wept. An older woman, elegant in traditional lace, walked up to her with tears in her eyes. My daughter stayed in a loveless marriage because I told her to chase security. You've shown me I told her wrong. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Outside, a reporter shoved a mic toward her. If the prince apologized today, would you go back? Amara smiled. He never knew me. Hugo did. Hugo stayed when I had nothing. Why would I return to a man who only loved me when cameras were watching? The clip went viral in under an hour. Even palace staff were reportedly sharing it behind closed doors. The next day, Chioma called, breathless. You've been invited to speak at the National Education Summit. What? Amara gasped. They said you're living proof that transformation begins at the ground level. Amara sat still. Not long ago, she was mocked for walking away from royalty. Now they were listening. The National Education Summit was hosted at the prestigious Eco Convention Center. It was an event that drew ministers, governors, international development partners, and some of the wealthiest donors in the country. The theme this year was Rebuilding Education from the Ground Up. Amara had no idea how her name ended up on the speaker list. I still think they meant to invite someone else, she said, looking at the printed program in her hand as the car neared the venue. Hugo, dressed in a crisp shirt he'd ironed 3 times that morning, grinned at her. Even if it was a mistake, you're going to walk in like it wasn't. Amara wore a flowing green dress sewn by a student's mother who'd insisted she wear it to match her destiny. Her hair was braided into a regal crown, and a simple pendant, a gift from Hugo, rested against her collarbone. As they entered the lobby, heads turned. Not in mockery this time, but in recognition. Some murmured, "Is that?" Others nodded respectfully. They were escorted to a private waiting area where refreshments were laid out. A coordinator approached with a nervous smile. "Miss Amara," he said, voice slightly shaky, "you'll be going up after the Minister of Education. 10 minutes and you're the final speaker." Amara blinked. The final? Yes. They wanted to end with the most authentic story. Hugo leaned close and whispered, "Now you know they didn't call the wrong person." Inside the hall, rows of dignitaries filled the audience. Giant screens flanked the stage. Live cameras recorded for national broadcast. Amara's heart beat in her ears. When her name was announced, the applause was polite, uncertain. She stepped onto the stage, the podium lights hot against her skin. She paused, looked out at the crowd. They were the same types who had once laughed at her, who tweeted her name with hashtags like #CrazyVillageGirl and #PalaceReject, who believed she was unworthy because she had dared to say no to a crown. Now they waited to hear her speak. She adjusted the mic. "Good afternoon," she began. "I'm not here today because I was perfect. I am here because I broke, and found pieces worth keeping." A few people leaned forward in their seats. "I was a village teacher. A woman raised on groundnuts and public transport. When the palace invited me, they weren't looking for love. They were looking for a pretty story. And for a while, I almost became one." A murmur swept through the audience. "But one evening I took a taxi ride that changed my life. Not because it was magical, but because, for the first time in a long time, I was seen. Not as a bride. Not as a headline. Just me." She paused, eyes sweeping across the room. "I said no to a prince on national TV. The next day I lost everything. My job. My reputation. Even my neighbors turned away." She inhaled deeply. "But I found something else. I found children hungry for knowledge. Mothers who cried because their kids could write their names. I found Hugo, my friend, my partner, my reminder that dignity doesn't need diamonds." Now the crowd was completely silent. She continued, "We started a school with one chalkboard and a broken roof. Today that school serves over 300 children. Not because we had wealth, but because we had purpose." Tears welled in some eyes. To anyone here who still believes that royalty defines value, let me remind you, gold can't hold a child's hand. Crowns don't read bedtime stories. And palaces don't wipe tears in slums. A wave of emotion swept through the room. "If we are truly rebuilding education from the ground up," Amara concluded, "then start where I started. Not with titles. Not with privilege. But with one child, one book, one willing heart." The hall was still for a full second. Then the applause erupted. It wasn't polite this time. It was thunderous. Ministers rose. Delegates clapped till their palms turned red. Even the press dropped their pens to join the ovation. In the back row, Hugo stood too, his eyes glassy. He didn't clap. He simply placed his hand over his chest. After the summit, dignitaries rushed to meet her. Someone from the UN requested a private audience. A tech CEO offered to fund her next 3 schools. A young journalist cried and said, "You gave us permission to say no." That night, as they returned home in Hugo's old cab, Amara removed her heels and rested her head on his shoulder. "You were brilliant," he whispered. "I was terrified. And yet you made them listen." She chuckled. "Can you believe that some of those people were the same ones who mocked me?" "Yes," he said calmly. "But now they finally saw you." She looked out the window at the bustling streets of Lagos, kids hawking pure water, women selling plantain, men dragging wheelbarrows of second-hand clothes. "I don't need their spotlight," she said. "No," Hugo agreed. "Because now you shine your own." And in that moment, Amara understood something deeper than she ever had before. Sometimes life gives you gold. Other times it gives you gravel. But the real treasure? It's in the journey that makes people see you, truly see you, without crowns or cameras. The sun rose gently over the outskirts of Lagos, casting a golden hue on the new block structure being painted at the edge of the slum. A group of children were already gathered at the gate of the community school, some holding worn books, others just eager smiles. Inside a modest bungalow nearby, walls painted sunshine yellow, flower pots on the windowsill, and laundry dancing on a line, Amara stood barefoot in the kitchen, flipping fried plantains with a practiced wrist. The aroma of ripe dodo filled the room. "Amara," Hugo called from the backyard, his voice muffled, "where did you put the spare nails?" "On the second shelf under the radio," she replied, smiling. He walked in moments later, sweaty and dust-covered, holding a hammer in one hand and a wooden sign in the other. It read, "Welcome to Amara Literacy Center. Every child deserves a chance." She turned to him, her eyes lingering on his face. He still wore the same worn shirt from the day she first rode in his taxi. Except now, his hands built schools instead of just steering wheels. He looked at her like she was made of gold. "You made breakfast," he said softly. "And you made a future," she replied. They ate on the small porch. No silverware, just their fingers and laughter. As they finished, one of the neighborhood girls ran toward the house. "Auntie Amara, there's someone here with a big camera." Amara and Hugo exchanged a look. "Let me guess," he said. "Another news crew? Could be. Or maybe the UN again." They both laughed. She walked to the gate, the girl skipping beside her. A man in a suit was standing there with a bouquet of flowers, looking out of place and deeply unsure of himself. "Miss Amara," he said. "Yes. I represent the African Education Awards Committee. You've been selected as this year's recipient for outstanding impact in underserved communities." She blinked. He extended the bouquet. "We hope to fly you to Kigali next month for the international summit. You'll be speaking to educators from 17 countries." Hugo walked up behind her just in time to hear the words. "Congratulations," the man said, stepping back. "I've also been asked to take a photo of you and your husband?" Amara looked at Hugo, who smirked. "Yes," she said proudly. "The man I married." They posed by the gate, with children peeking through the cracks behind them. Click. When the man left, Amara turned to Hugo and whispered, "Do you ever wonder how different our lives would be if I'd said yes that night?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "I don't need to wonder. Because I got the yes that mattered." She smiled, resting her forehead against his. They walked hand in hand back inside. On the wall of their living room hung a simple wooden frame, crafted by Hugo himself. Inside was a photograph taken during their wedding. Amara in her borrowed lace gown, Hugo with his paper ring, surrounded by children holding chalk-written signs that read "Love Wins." Beside it was another frame, a collage of photos from the literacy center. Hugo carrying desks on his back, Amara teaching under a mango tree, a child holding her first storybook. They had no throne, no gold, no royal guards. But they had joy. Deep, unwavering joy. That evening they sat outside again, this time with 2 bowls of pepper soup. The power was out, but the stars were alive. "Do you remember the day we met?" Amara asked. "In the taxi?" "Yes. You gave me your umbrella." He chuckled. "And you never gave it back." "Still have it," she grinned. "You were running from something." "I thought I was. But really, I was running toward someone." A breeze swept through, rustling the leaves overhead. "Do you think they still laugh?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" "The ones who mocked me. The ones who said I was a fool." Hugo leaned back in his chair. "Maybe. But they laugh from behind screens. You laugh from a classroom full of dreams." She reached for his hand. "You gave me courage." "No," he corrected. "I reminded you that you already had it." A child's voice rang in the distance. "Auntie Amara, I can spell elephant now." She laughed. Tomorrow you'll spell future. And as the stars above danced quietly, Amara leaned into the man she had chosen, not for his money nor his title, but for his kindness, his vision, and his unwavering belief in her. In a world where she once could have been a queen in chains, she had become something far greater. A woman who taught others how to rise. A woman whose name echoed not in palace halls, but in the voices of children who now knew how to read. She didn't marry the prince. She married the man who built her a kingdom, with nothing but love and wood and the truth. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe, and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.